How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Yeah, good. Usual having issues with my how to go live, but I'll get there one day. Yeah, I'm not as young as you guys, so information retaining isn't brilliant. Okay, so thank you for coming on today. And
Thank you for having me.
That's okay. I was really glad to get your message, and we've had a brief conversation. We've never met, so we don't know each other. But we had a brief conversation on the phone, and there's actually so much that we could talk about because you have done so much. You are working towards a lot, and you are really making a lot of differences on the ground. But the main thing that we spoke about, and then there's other things that I do want to touch upon, and maybe we might do another one later on, because there's something we discussed this afternoon that's really really useful to take out to others. But I think one thing that we spoke about initially was your work with tackling knife crime.
Yeah.
So that I think is really, really valuable. It's much needed. So I'd really like to just highlight that today, and then obviously touch on all the other work that you're doing. But, you know, kudos to you. You're doing amazing work, and I know you've had some challenges, and we'll talk about those as well. So just introduce yourself. So what you're doing, and, you know, you're in the legal field, aren't you?
Yes, that's right. So I've been called to the Bar of England and Wales in 2019. So currently I'm trying to progress in getting my place in chambers. So as everybody knows who's in the legal field, it's quite stressful to get to the stage that you're at. And it's a process, but you have to be patient, and you will, if you persevere, you will succeed.
And what sort of challenges have you faced to even get to this point where you are now?
So I mean, I have a single parent, so I came from a single parent background. My mom had to bring up me and my sister on her own. You know, we went from having everything when my dad was here to having nothing, and she had to pick herself up and really like work to keep a roof over our head and everything. And so obviously I didn't get all the kind of privileges that some people would have got. So in terms of fees, paying for bar school, it's very expensive. It's £18,000, and it's a lot. You don't get when I did it, you didn't get student finance for it, so you had to find ways of kind of funding it yourself. And because of my mom, I was able to go to bar school and get like my qualifications to progress as a barrister. In terms of challenges in the legal profession itself, we still face it, especially just being women, but BAME women on top of that. It's a struggle, and you have to really want to pursue a career in law to stay and persevere. Otherwise you will get knocked back. You have to be thick-skinned. And just some of the challenges in general that I've faced is people have come up to me and said, well, you're a woman and you're not Amritdari. How can you be the director or founder of two Sikh organizations? And it's like, I'm sorry. Do I not have a right? Everybody is on their own path to Sikhi. And that's the way I see it. By them doing that, they're just degrading and disrespecting our women from pursuing their career and speaking out. They say they want more women in the bunch to stand up and be active. How can they if you're pushing women down and you're disrespecting them? That's just going to knock their confidence and want to take a step back.
As I said, there's lots that you and I could talk about. But you know, credit where credit due. Credit to your mum. She must have really struggled and made many sacrifices to get you, and I'm sure she's very proud of you. So credit to her. So you know, we haven't spoken about, you're the co-founder for the Sikh Lawyers Association.
Yes, that's right. So we realized that there was no Sikh Lawyers Association within the legal profession. So there was the Hindu Association, there was the Muslim Association, there was the Christian Association, the Black Association, no Sikh Lawyers Association for Sikh. So when I was on my journey, when some of my colleagues were on their journeys, we didn't have anywhere to go to get advice from someone from our own community on the struggles that they face. So for example, someone who wears a dastar, they want to know what challenges they're going to face if they're allowed to wear the dastar in court when they're representing clients. And coming through our journey, we never had this. We couldn't approach any. I didn't know there was this many Sikh lawyers in the profession until I set up the Sikh Lawyers Association. So I was really shocked. And the aim is to provide these students who want a career in law to kind of have a place where they can come get advice, support, and we mentor these kids. We've got a mentorship program set up for them. So they've each been allocated a mentor who can guide them and advise them on their careers into law. But also we do various different events for them to come and listen to panel members' stories, members of the association. So our first ever event that we did was Sikhs in the legal profession. It was an amazing event. We had about 100 people attending that event. Since then, we've had amazing events. The turnout's been amazing and our association is increasing. But one other point I do want to mention on that is by creating the Sikh Lawyers Association, our goal was to make sure Sikhs are represented well within the legal profession. And currently, there is no training or guidance that has been given to barristers or judges on the Sikh faith. And we are very proud to say that we have made progress, because we are in conversations with the BSB. We've been selected to work on a project with them to provide training to Sikh barristers, just generally barristers and judges within the profession on the Sikh faith. And one of the topics that we will be training these barristers and judges on is 1984. Now that's never been done ever before, and we are trying to implement this as mandatory training because 1984 is a part of our history. That's our history, and that's a fact. Just like for the Jewish, Holocaust is an important part of their history, so is 1984. So we're really happy that the BSB want to work with us on this.
So just for people that don't know, because people outside of law might not know, what is BSB?
The Bar Standards Board. So they're the regulator for barristers and the judiciary. Yeah.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
So you've got to be in it to make some changes, right? To influence change in practice and what have you. You've got to be in there. So well done to you for doing that. And
thank you.
Probably bringing other older, more senior people in the legal profession under one banner as well, hopefully, with your Sikh Lawyers Association. So that's one aspect of the work that you're doing. The other work with Kaurs Legal, and I know you mentioned earlier when the rallies happened across the UK, you were the one that put out the advisory about what your rights are if you get stopped by the police and what have you. And I remember seeing that and I thought, oh, this is really good. This is really innovative. This is a way forward. And you told me that it was you that did that, just as a side conversation to what we were talking about. So just please share that for a minute, what you did there, because I think that was really valuable.
Yeah, so I've been to protests before within our community when we're going, whether it's the Juggy protest or it was the Parliament Square protest, and I've seen how very quickly situations can escalate because sometimes the police are very heavy-handed, and I know this from my work within the legal profession over 11 years, and it's people need to know what their rights are. If they don't, the police officers can sometimes misuse that and kind of take advantage of their vulnerability or not knowing their rights. So I knew that this was going to be a very big protest that was going to happen, and potentially there may have been some issues because of COVID, that I was anticipating that. And of course we weren't we weren't aware that there was going to be such a heavy police presence until we actually got there, and it was actually quite shocking, the level of police presence that was there. And in order to post those videos, I was kind of thinking on the aspects that people should know if they are going to be stopped by an officer, if they are asked to be searched. They need to know the right things to say. So first, am I being detained? That's the first question you should ever ask an officer. If they say no, you are free to walk away, and you do not have to give your name or address unless you are being detained. So it's just simple things like that. And also, what makes a lawful arrest? There's certain procedures under the PACE Act that they have to follow for an arrest to be lawful. And one of them is reading them the Miranda rights. And if that's not done, and the Miranda rights is basically you do not have to say anything. So that sentence, which everyone's probably heard in movies and TV series. And I just wanted people to be aware if there was a situation. And I think when I was on the ground, I managed to stop an arrest happening because I noticed that someone was being spoken to quite heavy-handed by the police, and they were being quite aggressive. So I kind of stood in, my friend kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, Benji, look, there's something happening here. So I kind of intervened, and I said to the officer, like, you know, you need to stop because he's not breaching COVID. He's within the 2 meters, but you're coming into his space. And I kind of just settled it down, and that ended up him not being arrested. But as I said, the officers were very heavy-handed. They even tried to threaten to arrest me because they were telling me to go away. I was in breach of COVID, but they failed to realize that the period between 12 and 2, we had permission to protest there, but they were not letting us protest and raise our voices for the Kasans. They kept everyone away from the Indian High Commission. That was their tactic. So then after 2 p.m, as soon as it hit 2 p.m, within 10 minutes, they started arresting people because that was it. That gave them their permission to do that. And I think it's just outrageous and ridiculous in the way people were treated. And one case that we are dealing with is a Singh was punched by an officer. And it's been nearly 4 months coming up soon, and we haven't had a response from the Metropolitan Police. We've chased them up in regards to what the outcome is, and if it was the other way around and the Singh had punched the officer, he would have already been charged by now with assault.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that was really useful, the way you put that out, and I think we need to see more of that, making people aware. So thank you for doing that. And it was quite popular, wasn't it? It was well received. It went around social media quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So somebody's asked a question. They're saying, with great respect to all Sikhs, however, you mentioned people tell you shouldn't be there because you are not baptized. So I don't know how to say this name. It's Bean Shai or somebody. So educating the bar and making them aware of issues, that's a different audience. What, I mean, we're coming off the topic now, but what women face amongst the Asian community, and we can only speak for the Punjabi community, there's a lot of male privilege. And a woman has to do a huge amount for her work to be recognized, for her to have any respect. It will always be, if there's a man and a woman sitting talking, the woman could be the one that has the most substance, but automatically the man will get the respect. And that's just the way we're wired, and that takes a hell of a lot to change, and women have to work very hard. That's within our community. So the work that's going on parallel to that, like you said, Tinessa, with educating the bar and what have you, that's a completely different level. So there's no reason why you only have to restrict yourself to, you know, engaging with Upney community as such. So I can't really agree with that comment that people have put up. So I think we will probably have some more lives, because I'm so interested in what you're doing and you know, your viewpoints and your experiences. But one thing that we wanted to speak about today is the work that you're doing with the knife crime. So I mean, I don't know what the stats and figures are like through COVID, because obviously there's been lockdown and probably people haven't been out as much. But knife crime's really getting out of hand across the UK. Here, where we live in the home counties, and nothing happens around here because it's a little train station, little village. But what we're seeing is people coming from London on the train lines to the little villages, and this is where the fights are happening. So just
Yeah.
in our small area in Langley, we've seen a few stabbings. So that really interested me, because we have children that age group. And,
Yeah.
and now we're seeing younger and younger children being enticed, boys and girls. And it's being really glamorized to be, stabbing somebody, or whatever the slang that's being used. So just please share with us what you're doing, why you're doing this work with the BAME community, and why you feel it was needed. And some people don't know what the BAME community is, so perhaps just mention that as well.
Yeah, so the BAME communities is Black, Asian and ethnic minority communities. And I think, like you said, Benji, that you're seeing it more in the smaller villages and people coming from London. The reason that is it's another problem to do with gangs, which is county line drug dealing. So what they do is they use these young, vulnerable kids that they try and recruit and groom into gangs that are carrying the knives to go along and do their county line drug dealing for them in these small little villages or counties, which is why it's now becoming an issue there as well, because once the rival gang gets heads up that gang is coming in onto their territory to sell drugs, that's when the issue happens and people get stabbed in the smaller villages. So now the kids in the smaller villages are now starting to pick up knives as well, to protect themselves. And I think this project really, I did a case back in 2014 when I was working as a paralegal with a law firm, and it was a murder trial in the Old Bailey, and the client was my age. He was involved in a gang, and it was a stabbing that had happened. A victim had been murdered by a stabbing. And just seeing him, the client was my age, and for him to sit there and say to me down in the cells, I just want my mum, I just want to go home. What do you say to someone that's the same age as you? It really touches you. And I think that's when I started to feel like I wanted to go into youth crime, and that was one of the areas I wanted to focus on, because I feel like us being a similar age and coming from either a similar background or that understanding of what happens in our communities, we're able to connect with these kids and really make a difference to them. And I think that's the core. So for example, as I said, I came from a single parent background. Like, some of these kids come from a single parent background, and I did start to go off the rails a bit when my dad left, and like it was headache for my mom. I put her through a lot, but I got into fights and stuff. I still remember there was one fight I got into, and my sister was there, and we kind of just, my sister was like, yeah, mommy no nahi dasna. And then like next day, mom found out, and we both got shifted from hiding it from her because I got called in. But I think I got to a point where I decided I don't want this lifestyle. It's your education is very important, and you can actually achieve something. And I always kind of knew I wanted to go into law, and I knew you can make a difference in the career path that you choose. So it's really to show these kids, like, we have come from similar backgrounds, we've been surrounded by similar issues, but we have a choice, and that choice is up to you to make. And if we can get members of the community getting involved in this project, like we were talking about, perhaps getting gang members who have been in that situation, who are now working with kids, to explain to them it's really not worth ruining your life over. And that's our aim, is to kind of make these kids realize. But also another thing that my partner Firen was discussing is we're thinking about opening an application center for them, where we can show them how to fill out most basic things like driving license applications, because they might not know how to do that, which will then encourage them to get a driving license in the correct way, rather than going out and driving without insurance or a license and potentially killing someone. So that's another aspect that we're looking at. Also CV and cover letter clinic, where we can help these kids build up their CVs and cover letters, apply for jobs, so they've got some sort of legal money coming in, rather than them going to the gangs and it being glamorized. But also showing them that there's things like apprenticeship, so they can get paid legally for working. instead of going in the gang life. And I think really we have to come together as professionals and members of the community to provide these kids with that opportunity. And by putting on workshops explaining the consequences of carrying a knife, barristers will be coming in to do workshops to discuss the cases that they've done, that they've seen has affected not only clients but also victims' families because of knife crime. And I really think if we create this safe space for them somewhere where they are able to trust us, they will come to us if they're in a situation and they want to get out of it. But also I'm quite for helping women as well, as you probably know from all the work I've done. Girls are being groomed as well into these gangs. They're being groomed to carry knives. There's been cases where girls have been found to have knives in their bras because boys make them do this. They are being sexually abused in these gangs. They are being passed around from one gang to another. And I think we kind of overlook the fact that it also involves girls as well. And it's really important that we try and educate the parents as well, knowing what signs to look out for of their kids if they're acting up. And we know that not all parents have the time because they're so busy going out trying to put a roof over the kids' heads, and they just don't have time. Perhaps we can provide some kind of support to them. But also we're looking at producing an appropriate army, adult army, which will basically mean people that are trained to be appropriate adults. If the parents are unable to attend the police station, if their child has been arrested, we can send someone out, a volunteer out, to go and take their place at the police station.
So you're basically developing a support system, aren't you?
Yeah.
So one thing I need to ask you, so a lot of our community will sit there and say, "Nahi, sadde ch nahi hunda."
No, that's a lie. It happens in our community. There was a stabbing in Southall just the other day. Also, there was a case recently in the BBC, if anyone heard about the Singh who was stabbed in East London for trying to stop a robbery from happening. He was also stabbed. But there are, I know people have reached out to me saying that it is an issue within our community as well, because we tend to forget that our kids go to a mixed school. It's not a Sikh school that they go to. So a lot of our kids go to a mixed school. They're going to be mixing with different cultures, different backgrounds, and they're going to learn. Gangs happen. If we look, for example, in Canada, look at the Punjabi community gang crime there. I remember when I went to Vancouver 2 years ago and we were at a Starbucks and it was all sealed off. And I said to my best friend, I said, "What's happened here?" She said, "There was a shooting 2 days ago." So it does happen within our community. And I think we need to stop brushing it under the carpet, and we need to start recognizing that it does happen in our community as well. And our kids are open to this and open to being groomed.
So you mentioned Canada. I was going to say, in Canada, gang warfare is so rife amongst the Punjabi community. The police target the Punjabi community at gurdwaras and events to tackle knife crime, to tackle gun and drug crime. And they actually have it written in Punjabi across their police cars that we have confiscated this from drugs, don't go into drugs, don't go into gangs. So it's a huge problem. And I can't help but feel that we're following them here. It's been glamorized. I mean, Punjabis have been glamorizing gangs and
Yeah.
you know, and all the rest of it, guns for years. But I do feel that because the world is such a small place and we are so integrated here with other communities, I do feel that our children are exposed to a lot more. Even if they go to a Sikh school or not, they are exposed to a lot more on social media. This music, that is it grime music that they listen to?
Drill music, drill rap,
drill. So there's all that, and all those elements that, you know, are well publicized as being you know, inciting drug gangs and knife crime. Our children are also exposed to that. So I think anybody that sits there and thinks Naini sadde bache nahi karde or the Punjabi community is not affected by it is very, very misled, would you say?
Yes, I agree, because social media, for example, just as a start, drill rap music is everywhere on YouTube, everywhere. Anyone can access it. You know, and especially now, because this is how gangs talk to one another, through this drill rap music, and try and glamorize the fact that they've stabbed this person, that person, and they try and glamorize this lifestyle to others, and that's their way of getting people in, victims in. And also, like, if you live on an estate, it doesn't matter if you're Punjabi. It is, it happens there, but not always just in the estate areas, but it is known, they are known to hang around those areas as well. And from my experience of cases that I've done, we've got these postcode wars in London, we've got the gas gang in Brixton, we've got the TN1 gang in Tulse Hill. You know, there's various different, and if you step past in that territory, you know, you can get stabbed. I have a friend who isn't in that lifestyle, but he has brothers who are in that lifestyle. He still can't step foot into Brixton, because if he does, the other gang will recognize that he's the brothers of the other two, and he will be stabbed, even though he's not in that lifestyle. And I think that's the sad reality, is that we need to realize that unless we provide these kids with something else, another role model, because if they look up to these gangs as role models, they're going to find a role model in there. So for example, if they don't have a dad, the main ringleader of the gang, they're going to look up to them as possibly that father figure, because the people that are at the top of these gangs are majority adults. They could be in their 30s or 40s, that are leading these gangs, and you've got all the other youngsters. So it's really, they're trying to glamorize this lifestyle and try and create these role models that are attractive to these kids. And if we can create that somewhere else, and something positive to make them come away from that life, come away from knife crime, we're doing something right. We're saving a few of the kids' lives.
So Tinessa, if we think about percentage wise, I mean, every child matters, no matter what community they're from and what have you. But just as a wake-up call to our Punjabi community, our Sikh community, what percentage do you think are involved of our kids? Because, you know, we might think, oh, well, we don't live on an estate, we live in a nice house, we've worked hard, you know, money's not an issue, we've got a good family network. But that doesn't mean that the child won't be seduced into this life, right? Yeah, no, it doesn't. So obviously we're still looking into the statistics and everything, and that's something we're still working with. But I would probably say about 40% are probably glamorized to this lifestyle, and especially through social media now, more than ever COVID, you know, it's their chance to recruit people online, make YouTube videos. And obviously there was a decrease by I think 3% last year in the knife crimes because of COVID. But then as soon as lockdown lifted, there was a 13% increase in threats to kill in knife crime, which is often what the knives are carried for. They're threatening one another's lives, and I think that's really important to know. But also the way that the government are tackling this, they're going about it the completely wrong way, because they're ignoring grassroots projects or communities that are trying to tackle this problem. They're not listening to them. And this month, at the end of the month, they're going to be introducing this new Home Office legislation, which basically means that parents will also be prosecuted alongside their kids for any offence that's committed. So, for example, if they are in possession of a knife or an offensive weapon that's against an offence under the Offensive Weapons Act, the parents will also be punished.
And they're trying to do this because they think it will make these kids stop from committing these knife crimes, and they will think twice. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that, because when you're in that moment, you've got that adrenaline running through you. All you see is red, and you cannot see anything past that. You're not going to think about your parents. You're not going to think about anybody else and whose life you're taking. In that moment, then and there, all you've come to do is stab someone, and that's it. And that's the reality. And I think the government are going about this legislation the whole wrong way, because some of these parents are working so hard to keep a roof over these kids' head, and they have to go out to work. What else can they do? They don't have the support from somewhere else. And especially if they're a single parent, like, what does the government expect them to do? And instead they're trying to punish the parents now.
That does not seem like the solution to this, does it?
No.
That's a double whammy for the parents. And another thing that I've had some experience with, families that have had children going down this route, there is nowhere in our community to go for help. There's such a taboo around it. It's like if your child's gone off the path and they've got involved in some gang or something, it's like the whole family's shunned, and the family's struggling. They need some support, but I'm finding people just don't step up and think, let's see what we can do collectively, look out for each other. And I feel those families then are isolated even more, and they feel embarrassed.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think that's why we have created this project, to make communities and our community feel like they have a place to stay, to come to get help, to seek help. And of course, everything that is done is confidential. Nothing will be disclosed. All our aims is to help these kids, and it's all done confidentially. So if they have a situation, they think their kids are in gangs or they are carrying knives for the wrong reasons, they can come to us, they can have a discussion. We have some mentors on board ready to help these kids. We've got a self-defense instructor ready to help these kids, to kind of take their anger out in another way, to show them how to defend themselves, and that they don't need to carry a knife to protect themselves. And I think if I could just make it absolutely clear, if you have that concern and you feel like your kids are involved in some sort of gangs or knife crime, please come to us, because that's what we've set the project up for. We want to help our kids, help them get away from this lifestyle, show them that there are options, and if you want to make changes, you have to do it internally. And I think it's very hard, because when a kid goes to apply for a job and they get turned down because the owner thinks, oh, they've not got much qualifications, or they've got a previous criminal record for selling weed, for example, maybe a small amount, they get shut down, and then they think, what's the point? And that automatically deters them into the gang life. Like, oh, no employer is going to give me a chance. No professional is going to give me a chance. So what the hell, I'm just going to carry on with the way I'm living and live the gang life. And that's not what we want. And I think we as professionals also have a responsibility to try and give these kids a chance, give them a second chance.
Because then that's all they know, isn't it? That's comfortable.
Yeah.
It might be the wrong way and it might be dangerous, but that's their security, because they're accepted and they know. So
Yeah.
we talked about vulnerable children. So what about parents that are here, the first generation are here, and the children are struggling to fit in? Do you think they are more vulnerable?
Yes, I think possibly, especially, they're struggling to fit in, they have to find their feet. And as we know, even just being coming from BAME backgrounds, we struggle to fit in. We were probably given racial abuse at school. I know I got it. So it's still difficult for us to fit in, even though we've been born and brought up here. So for them, I can't imagine how difficult it is. But I think if we create a community kind of support network for them, where they can interact with other youngsters in the same situation as them, that will encourage them to go in a positive way of life rather than down the gang route.
And in terms of reaching out to parents, do you do anything? Have you got anything in Punjabi, say, that parents and families will know that you're available and you can provide them or signpost them towards support?
Yes, so we're currently working on getting some leaflets done for the project, and they'll be in English and Punjabi. We're also thinking about creating some little books about know your rights. So we'll do it in a series. So they'll be in both English and Punjabi, so parents can also read them and understand. That's our aim, is to provide it in both English and Punjabi.
Brilliant. We'll happily support that, because it's much needed. And often I think in our Sikh community, we're often so busy fighting amongst ourselves with the politics of gurdwaras and trying to outdo each other. We don't actually tackle these issues that are the most important issues. We're not looking after our next generation. Where are we heading? So the work that you're doing is amazing, it really is. And some of the comments that we had are amazing, and some people have said they're not able to stay now, but can they watch this later? So this will be saved and it will be available on social medias, and that's where people will then view it and share it amongst others. So what are your wants? What do you want to happen? Say in a year's time, if you came back and started to spoke to me in a year's time, what would you want to be able to say, this is what we've achieved in a year?
I think to be able to achieve in the next year, getting some kids off the streets, saving some lives, even if it's a few, that's still something. We still saved someone's life. But I think also we need to think about it. It's not just the victim's life that goes, it's the kid's life that goes, that's going to end up in prison for God knows how long. It's 2 lives that are lost that day that a knife is taken out. And I think if in a year's time, our aim is to hopefully have helped some of these kids, possibly got them into the goals that they want. For example, if some of them want to be footballers, some of them want to come into the legal field, we have people that are available and open to opportunities, providing them with work experience so they can get a feel for it. If we can get some of these kids at least off the street and help them, I think we've done something right. And I know it's going to be a long journey, it's going to take time, but in a year's time, hopefully we're able to save some lives.
So like you say, with every percentage, we talked about percentages earlier, there are parents involved, there's grandparents involved, there's siblings involved on both sides. So it's such a ripple effect across families, and the devastation, and for a minute of seeing red, like you say. And these children, so somebody asked, what age are these children? So what's the youngest that you've seen?
10 years. 10 years old, carrying knives now. Sometimes, some cases, it could be 8 or 9 years old.
And they're being used as well, aren't they, to carry?
Yeah, they're being used for not only to carry knives, but they're used to carry drugs, to go on county line drug dealing, which is also an issue that we're trying to tackle along with this, because these kids are used as the scapegoats because they're at the bottom of the chain. If we look at the whole chain altogether, they're right at the bottom. They're used as the scapegoats, and CPS and the Home Office are not understanding this issue. They're not understanding the problem. They are still prosecuting these little kids who are just right at the bottom of the chain. They're very vulnerable. Some of them didn't even want to do it, but they had been threatened into doing it, because they get threats like, oh, I'm going to kill your mom if you don't, I know where your mom lives. And a little kid that age is going to be scared. They're going to pick up the drugs and carry them for this person, and they are being prosecuted for it. They're like the scapegoats. They're being used as scapegoats. And I think we really have to kind of try and, in a way, get our kids engaged in these knife crime prevention workshops to understand the reality and consequences of carrying a knife. And we will have to work with schools as outreach projects, and go in and do talks to these kids on the serious consequences of carrying a knife. We have to start really young, and that being in primary school.
So somebody, Anjwalia, has just said BAME pupils are 10 times more likely to be permanently excluded. So then you're in that cycle then, aren't you? Not having education and stuff.
And once you're excluded from school, you kind of you lose motivation. You think, oh, they're not going to give me a chance. They don't like me. They just see me as a troublemaker. That's it. I think I got excluded once for a few days from school. Obviously, I got chitted from my mom. Like, yeah, it was horrible. I don't want to go through that again. But
what, the shitted from mum or being excluded?
From mom. Yeah, I think that was the worst, seeing mom turn up. I didn't know they had called mom into school, and I think seeing her there, it just kind of brought back, yeah, you're gonna get shitted when you get home. And I think coming to that reality that it's not all about getting into fights. It's not about, sometimes, yes, I can understand why kids get so defensive, because if racial comments are coming their way and they're being racially abused and bullied in school, but then I think we need to tackle the bullying more in school, how we can help these kids stick up for themselves. And by sticking them in a school that's for special children with like behavioral problems is not this option, and it's not the situation, because in those schools children just become worse.
And Ange has just mentioned something about the prison population. Many years ago, I think about 25 years ago, I worked in Kent. That was my first job, and I'm in the health profession. And we used to visit the local prison, Rochester Prison. And prior to that, I'd lived quite a quiet life. Went into the prison and I was gobsmacked because the prison walls had pictures. The community room had pictures of Kunde, Sikhs, and I'm thinking, I'm in a prison, right? Why are there so many ugly in prison? When I started speaking to some of these young guys, they were the ones that had been excluded from school. They'd struggled to fit in. They were living in a polarized world from what their parents were in. They're completely on different platforms. So I think as a parent, I would say the best thing that parents can do is be friends with your children, talk to them, listen to them, understand what's going on in their life. And you might not like what they're saying. Your daughter might be talking about boys, but if you don't even talk to them, how are you going to know what's going on and guide them to where you need them to go, right?
And I think that
there's when I listen to our kids, their friends say, "Oh, I couldn't talk to my parents about that." Why not? Who's going to guide you if you can't? So I think the older generation need to learn a lot. Because the world is changing. The world's changing.
I definitely think that kids don't have that close connection. They don't feel comfortable in going to their parents, speaking openly to their parents. I know at one point I did go through that phase, and I hid a lot of stuff from mom. I couldn't tell her things, but now I tell her everything openly. Tell her everything about. She knows everything that I do, and our relationships become much stronger. And I would encourage these kids to speak to your parents, but I would also say to the parents, make your kids feel comfortable to speak to you, because if they think they're just going to get shitted for what they're saying, they're not going to think it's worth going through the grief in telling you something that's happening in their life. And potentially, if they're going through something and it's such a big issue, you could potentially save them from getting into a much worse situation than they'll find themselves in. So I think it's really important that our parents understand that having that connection with your child and not getting angry all the time when you hear something that they say that you don't like, that's not the way to go, because they're not going to listen. They'll have their guard up. They'll never come and tell you anything again. And I think this is where we have gone wrong consistently with our community.
And that's where you're pushing your children to the groups that are making them feel seen and accepted. Okay. We've gone on for so long, but I feel that we're going to need to reconvene soon, and then you can update us more. There's so much more that I want to talk about, but we're nearly into an hour. Just give us, in a nutshell, signs that a child's being groomed, or they're getting in with the wrong. What would be the telltale signs of somebody?
So, for example, they're coming home late from school. They're on their phone a lot. texting or calling secretly. They are right. I mean, I know you can't always check the kids' bags and stuff, but also the way that they're behaving, sometimes you can tell, like if they're a bit more rude or disrespectful. They may not always do this at home, but it's a possibility. Definitely at school, if they're having issues at school, that's kind of like a big red flag. But also, if you're seeing things that your kid is bringing home and buying, for example, expensive trainers, PS5s, for example, that you haven't given the kids money to buy. So where are they getting all these gifts from? And I think that is one of the biggest way that these kids are groomed, because the big hotshots at the top of the drug dealing chain or the gangs chain, they try and convince these kids to come in by buying them things, and buying them the expensive trainers that they always want, but their mom can't afford. So these are one of the ways. And I think my partner Firen in this project, the way he's tried to tackle this problem is, he said to the kids, if you hand me in your knives, I will give you money. You can go buy whatever you want. Or he's given them vouchers for something that they want. And that was a way for him to build up the trust with these youths, for them to contact him and say, okay, Firen, I've got a knife. Can you come and collect it and hand it into the police? And I think that's where we need to start, is trying to give them competitions where they can potentially win something that's going to help them with their life. I don't know whether that's an apprenticeship or something like that, something which they're going to get money coming in and they can see that's beneficial. So one of the biggest red flags would be the gifts that they're bringing home, the expensive stuff.
I think there's a lot of potential with what you've started. And I said to you when we initially spoke about it, this is something that Ravi's quite passionate about as well.
Yeah.
I know when we see on the news or we hear of somebody, it resonates with us because our children are at that age, right? So, well, they're a bit older now when you say that they've started at 8, but when they were teenagers, we were really careful to engage with them, to talk to them. And often their friends would say, why do you talk to your mum and dad about these things? And our kids don't know any different. And they'd be like, well, who else am I going to talk to, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, and we've heard of kids sneaking out at night time, and you just think the risks that you're putting yourself to. But thank you for that. I think that's really, really useful. Will you put some signposts up on your story or your thing? And I'm going to share this video. And I, you know, I'm sure many people will share it. And we've had some really positive feedback on the messages here. Let's do some more. I know you're really busy. You've got a whole line. You've got a lineup of events because you're launching this initiative. But definitely, I think we'll chat after to see how we can.
No, definitely. Yeah. And I just wanted to say to all the girls who think that they don't have a voice and you know, they shouldn't do something that they're passionate about because you feel like you're going to be targeted, disrespected and degraded by the community. And sometimes it's male and female people within our community that disrespect you. Ignore them. Who cares what they think? Do what you've got to do, because at the end of the day, you're doing your seva, you're doing your bit, which is what we've always been brought up to do in Sikhi. And if you're making positive changes for our community, then who cares what people think? And don't ever let anyone disrespect you or degrade you and knock your confidence, because you have to rise above it. As women, we need to stick together. And as they say, behind every successful woman is a story that gave her no choice. So
100%, Tinessa, 100%.
Yeah.
There are so many stories that we could share of women having to, you know, lift themselves up from the ground. But this is why I've started doing these, because I do feel that our girls especially are not given a voice, they're not given a platform. And now you started your journey, and once you get to where you want to be and you get more recognition, then people will start taking an interest. But it's that journey and the build up to it where you need the support the most. You don't need people celebrating you once you've made it. You need people to support you getting there.
Because if they're not here during the hard times, what good are they during your good times? Like, you've got to be in it the whole way. And you know, to all the people that have disrespected me and degraded me up until this point, I mean, they can try, but they won't get any help from me going forward, because, you know, you tried to knock my confidence, but I've risen above everything that you've tried to chuck at me, and I'll keep going with my seva, and that's all that matters, is trying to get people to kind of see that as a woman you still have a voice and you still have a right, and we are not beneath men, but if anything we are just as much have a right to make decisions about stuff and should be included in the decision making process, which I think some men in our community think, oh, this is not a woman's place. A woman's place is in the kitchen making roti, looking after the house, then yane, you should just get married and that's it. And that's not it anymore. Women have careers, they're independent, and if there's anything I learned from my mom is never rely on a man. From what she went through, you have to be independent. Don't ever rely on a man, because anything could happen. They could die, they could leave you, anything. Then what will you do to stand up on your own 2 feet? You have to start all over again. So I would say to my women, be independent, don't rely on anyone, be yourself. Self-love is the way to go.
You've said everything that I would say, but don't ever, I think if anybody tries to put you down, or tries to knock your confidence, then you that says more about them than about you. And we've got the usual idiots that come on and think it's funny, so I'll block that person in a minute. But yeah, so you know, somebody that tries to put you down, it says more about them and their small-mindedness than it does about you. So, you know, and I put up something on Instagram earlier that if somebody tries to dull your light to make themselves shine brighter, it's not going to. So you carry on what you're doing. You're an awesome young lady, and credit to your mum. Please say that to her, really. She's done an amazing job with you, and I'm sure you're going to be a fantastic role model for the next generation going on, and you've got our full support.
Thank you so much, Benji.
So we'll save this and we'll speak soon.
Okay, take care.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.